Hey everyone, welcome to another Dark Shadows World of Warcraft video. This video is going to talk about, just the Mythic Plus scoring system in general. Um, so basically you get your base score for your level, and then you get a certain amount of points for how much percent under the time you are. You add that to the base, you get your score. You add up all the scores, you get your total score, and then you're on your way. But this is a more detailed, or more detailed information about the exact numbers that you get. All right, so we'll go through this. All you really need to do is have a 7th grade math level of education to follow this. And if you don't, well, try to be less stupid and try to follow anyway. All right, dumbass, let's go. So here we go. You got the base scores. They're in intervals of 15. Except when you do this new bracket shit, I don't know, I guess it's like when another affix comes in, they just decide to do this. Basically, I just looked at every score on Raider.io, and I just found the base. And I found that I was just counting by 15. I'm like, dude, the numbers are off. What's going on? Until I realized that 4 different places, they jump by 30. So I think this is to discourage people from quitting keys because you get a minus 15 penalty for failing. And normally that puts you below one chesting the key before. But if it's at the side of a new bracket, failing like a 10 will put you at a 305. I don't know, minus the percent. But if you're not much over, it'll be 304 instead of 305. It'll still be well above the 290 for barely passing. So I guess that's why they did that. But later on, they're like, no one really needs gear, crest. We don't need this bracket shit anymore. So that's what that is about. So, okay, you start out, you're doing a 2 key. You get 155 points, you barely pass. That's the minimum for passing. And for the maximum is 15. And 40% is the cap. That is why I came up with the 0.375 points per 1% formula. And that would be a 2 chests, 7.5 points, and 3 chests, 15 points. So if you did a 30-minute dungeon in 18 minutes, that's 40% under. That is a 3 chest. Now, if you did it in 8 minutes, that's way more than 40% under. You'll still only get 15 points because 15 points is the cap, hence the max score. I guess they didn't want you to get a higher score than if you passed the key above it. That was the point of this cap. Now they also have a you failed minimum cap for being a failure. So it goes like this. We already said you get plus 7.5, plus 15 for 20, 40%, 2 chests, 3 chests. But if you're over, you failing, you get the minus 15. You fail, then you get minus the same amount of points as if you're 20% over. So you're 20% under. So instead of plus 7.5, you lose minus 7.5. And if you're 20% over, boom, you get minus 22.5. Now, if you're right at 40, but slightly under, then you'll get like barely under minus 30. So the lowest score you can get without hitting 0 is 125.1 or something. But Blizzard basically says once you hit 40, past 40, you're, below by 2. Like if you fail a 4 by 40%, you're down 30 points and you're basically doing worse than passing a 2 on time. So they just said that's the cutoff and you're going to hit 0. So it doesn't matter what level key you are doing. It does not matter. And this is how I figured it out. I just looked, hey, why does this guy still have 0 points? And so I checked it out. I'm like, oh, look, he did this Arakara. I don't know why it's not showing it's lagging a little bit. Yeah, and 41%, which is past that 40% threshold. And same thing here, that's 50 something percent. So it just gives you the default 0. And while this guy, he did his thing with, or Miley virus, it's lagging, but I already checked. It was 39% over. So that's why it's barely 125.1. So that's that. And this is how the scaling systems goes. They just want to, just basically fail you and say try again and don't fail by that much. But most of the time, your high score is going to be the base plus, whatever. The stuff that you passed. It's just going to be a little different, at the lower level because of this new bracket bonus that gives you a 30-point difference between this key and this key. So that's basically that. Just when you look at your radar IO, just say, hey, this is the base, and this is the percent times 0.375, and I'll get this. That's it. So if you want to get like a 3,000 rating, that's, you divide that by 8, you get an average of 375 score. Normally, if you do all keys on time, the average, I'd say, is 8%, 1.5 minutes under. So let's say you're and a little bit less at the higher keys because, it's tougher. So maybe you can be only 2 points above. But I say around the 12 to 13 range, you're safe to do it 3 points over. And 375 is kind of right in between. Maybe a little closer to the bottom. But when it's in between like that, basically you figure you're going to have to do an average of 12.5 level keys. So 3 13s, 3 12s. It could be, 114, 111, and then 3 12s and 3 13s. Either way, 4 12s, 4 13s on average, and that's 3K. Give or take, 5 to 10 points. And that's how you calculate it. If, say, you've done all your keys and you're like, you have a hybrid assortment of 12s and 13s, how do I get to, if I did one key higher in your 3K, you'd probably get to 3120. Because raising every key one level is 15 points, and you times that by 8, that's 120. So if someone is 120 or IO above you, they're pretty much on average doing one key higher than you. Now the difference would be if you're like in the 7 bracket and low, then like if you've done all 7s on time and someone's done all 8 on time, they'll be 240 ahead of you. So just don't think at the low bracket, just because, especially between 7 and 10, there's 2 brackets. So you may think, oh, they're like 3, they're so much higher than me, but they're really just 3 keys are higher than you, and you haven't done it, and it's just that 3 keys is going to be like 7 or 5 key levels. It'd be like 600-point difference, but it really should just be 360 if it was 3. That's just because, yeah, you get it, right? An extra 30 points. But in the end, not have to worry about any of that. Just get to the 12 bracket, be with the big boys, and be at that, 2,600 and up range. That's 2,600 would still be at 11, right? But, yeah, and then you'll be good. That's it. And here's an example, basically. For 10 points, you can get it 4 different ways. For almost negative 3 chesting, which is almost 40% over, because 3 chesting is 40% under, you'll be at barely over 410. Obviously, if you are over 40%, you are at 0. So this is barely under that 40% over. Then you barely fail by 1 second. That is 410. That's the 16 being subtracted, 15 being subtracted from that. And you barely pass, then you have like 410, 0.01, whatever. And then you can also remember 3 chests, something. But once you get to really, pretty much anything over 10, you're not really 3 chesting. Unless, for score. Because if the people at 3 chest 10s, they're doing 15 and 16 keys, they're not. But, yeah. And that's basically it. hopefully this was informative and help you, predict, what you need for different scores. It's very linear. You're pretty much just going to be a few points over if you one chest these. Up to 7.5. Remember, 7.5 puts you halfway in between here and here. So 2 chesting is good. That's why people like that. Even if you can get 7 extra points just by 2 chesting something that you barely one chested. And you do that a couple times, that's almost equivalent to just doing it 1 key higher. Right? You do 1 key higher, you get 14 points for a slightly slower time. Or you 2 chest 2 dungeons at the same level that you barely one chested. Same thing. And when your score gets higher, you get into higher keys. That's just how it works. So that, once again, point system. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm new to streaming, so I don't really have any viewers. No friends to really support me. They're just doing their own thing. I'm 40, so on the older side. So I appreciate it if you would tune into the stream, send a follow, maybe even stay there. Even if the chat's not active, I'm going to work on getting that second monitor and actually pay attention to chat more. And get affiliated or whatever. Definitely have the hours, just don't have the viewers. So I'm making YouTube videos. Hopefully they're informative and will help me, get that stream going. Thank you very much, everyone. Until next time, peace out. And just for the record, I'll have more videos, Mythic Plus related, different aspects of it, meta classes, pugging, how to get high scores as a non-meta versus meta, forming groups versus not, and vice versa, doing your own key versus not. All that lovely good shit. All right. Peace out.